You're a pastor about to start at a new church. Let's talk about how to make that work well at the start. Right now on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Matthew. Last week, we were talking about having a new pastor start at your church. This week, we're talking about you're the pastor and you're starting at the new church. What should you do? So we laid down in week one some advice to hopefully help you out, help you be successful in that position. And today we want to lay some truth on you to help you help yourself be successful in this new position. And as we gave caveats last week, even if this isn't you, even if you're not starting at a new church right now, you may know someone who's going to be starting at a new church and you could pass this advice along. You may have some other staff person. This is not just for senior pastors. This is true for youth pastors. I actually had a conversation just yesterday, by the way, with a church who let a youth pastor go. And he hadn't done anything wrong, but it just wasn't working. And I was thinking, man, I think they set him up for failure.
And
so yeah, this is good advice to have in your back pocket, regardless of your current employment situation.
yeah.
So,
Wow. Yeah, man, boy, I hate hearing that, I mean, to know that they couldn't work that out. And which always makes me think, could they have worked it out? I mean, how much effort was put in, how much grace was given on both parties? Any relationship between humans or groups of humans requires grace, requires good communication. I mean, it requires people with an attitude of giving towards the other. I think about this all the time. I don't think about it all the time. I've thought about this. People that get divorced, I mean, I think making a marriage work is putting the other person before yourself. And so, to me, when relationships sever, I think when there's not necessarily anything has happened, some acute situation has happened, then, I feel like it might often be the product of kind of a selfishness to some degree on one or both parties, not wanting to give up something for the other in order to make the relationship work. And there's a gazillion different reasons that things might not work, and it's no fault of one or the other. But
oh no, I mean, yeah, you're saying that, but it's usually the fault of one or the other, or both. Yeah, so yeah. But also just bad communication. And I don't want to sort of give details here, but with this specific situation with this youth pastor, I don't know that the expectations were clear, and I don't know that, essentially they were bleeding some families, and if you kind of have a loss of confidence from the youth ministry families, it can be really hard to get that back. Well, how did that happen in the first place?
Yeah, right.
So and sometimes it's a bridge too far, sometimes you can go back and fix those communication things, sometimes you can't. And that's actually the point of this episode is you want to get started on the right foot. So yeah, maybe we can hop through.
Let's jump into our first point, and we're saying be a student before becoming a shepherd. It's so important whenever you hit the ground, you're maybe not even unpacking yet, and you're already going to be working on relationships at that point. When you come to start at a new church, you've got to be the student, gaining as much information as you can. And with that attitude, please tell me everything. I want to know everything. Last week, we talked about all of the details. In fact, in the first point we talked about last week, the details that a pastor is going to need to be successful and not, accidentally step on toes and things like that. So yes, from your perspective now, coming in, be asking for these things. Be thinking about all that you may not know. You're going to want to know about all of these little things. The example I gave last week was the people that get hurt because the previous pastor would pop into their little prayer group that was meeting on Sunday morning, before getting ready to start the service. Well, find out, do these kinds of things happen? What are the rhythms of the church? What are these things that aren't necessarily in the bulletin? The unwritten meetings or connection points that your church is used to having. Or Scott, you brought up, like the race weekend in Bristol, Tennessee, cultural things that happen in and around the city or the church. Just ask questions to find out things that you don't even know what to ask, so that you can start to have those conversations. But the more details you can get about people and places and things and processes, the better you're going to be, and the faster you can get up to speed.
Yeah. You could summarize it as just be curious,
Mm-hmm.
be inquisitive. This is good advice for consultants too. And I like to pride myself. I think I'm pretty good about being curious, but sometimes I find myself skipping steps and not being as curious as I should be. And if anyone from this church is listening, you'll know it was a minor mistake, but a mistake I made just a couple of weeks ago. I was doing an analysis with a church, and they kept talking about a particular space on their property. And I had been around their property, but I had not been in every room and in every space on their property. And there were a lot of comments as we were working through this analysis on this one space. And I kept thinking they were talking about one building that they own. And some of their comments were about that one building, but most of the comments were about a building I had never walked into. And so it kind of I definitely didn't catch the drift. And then they were like, why don't we take you over there and so you can see it? And then I was like, those comments make way more sense now that I've seen this room. And so I know that as the pastor, there's probably not going to be rooms you haven't walked into, but there can be programs that you might be making an assumption that when they say women's Bible study, you think it's the one that meets on Thursday nights, but actually they're talking about the one that meets on, Tuesday mornings. And that's not the same group of people. There are things that you just don't know. You don't know the dynamics. You don't know the relationships involved. It's you should ask way more questions. People will be gracious with you. So in that situation, I'd be like, whoa, I totally missed this. Sorry, guys. And no one was mad. Everyone was like, yeah, it makes sense. And it didn't hurt anything in the process. In fact, we all had kind of a huge laugh about this particular space and why. They were like, yo, you've really missed out. You really should go see this room. But people will be gracious with you if you go, can you explain that to me? I feel like I'm missing something. Tell me more about that. People will be gracious with you, but when you kind of go in guns blazing, making assumptions, it's a great way to get people not to like you.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's going to be things that they don't even realize, pet names that buildings or rooms end up with, that might sound like one thing to you, but it's not. It's something different. So these are the weird little things that, from no fault of theirs, they're not intentionally trying to mislead you. They're just using the lingo that they use. And you're going to have to go, tell me exactly what that is. I want to make sure. And we run into this all the time, Scott, because churches come up with cute names for all kinds of ministries and events and all kinds of things. And we're always having to go, okay, tell me what this is.
What is that exactly? Yeah. So a little bit of the lightheartedness, a lot of curiosity.
Yeah.
A ton of humility goes a long way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Our second point is to prioritize relationships over results. Don't come in there guns blazing because you've got great ideas and you're really excited about the future and the potential that the church has. We'll speak into this a little bit in our next point as well, but prioritize relationships first. And we would always tell a pastor, unless, there's sometimes different circumstances, but for the most part, give it 6 months, give it at least 6 months. Just get to know the people and the rhythms of the church and just the things that can't be explained on paper. You just have to experience them and feel it out. So just take some time. Don't expect that you're making changes on day one, unless there's some really weird circumstance and already know all about it and they are excited for you to do something. And that's not usually the case. So just take the time, plan times for this though, have coffee times and dinner plans and, weekend outings or various things to get to know people. I know you're you probably have left relationships behind from wherever you were previously. And there may be this human relationship need even. So you want to make friends. You're going to have to prioritize that for you and your wife, your kids. I mean, everybody that's been affected by the change. And just plan that out. Don't get so buried in the work that you miss out on the opportunity to build new friendships and relationships and get to know the people.
Yes, I'm going to read to you a quote.
All right.
From G.K. Chesterton.
Okay.
This is going to be familiar to some of our listeners, maybe not to others. It's the principle of Chesterton's fence. So he says, in the matter of reforming things, as distinct from deforming them, there is one plain and simple principle, a principle which will probably be called a paradox. There exists in such a case a certain institution or a law, let us say for the sake of simplicity, a fence or a gate erected across a road. The more modern type of reformer goes up to it and says, I don't see the use of this, let us clear it away. To which the more intelligent type of reformer will do well to answer, if you don't see the use of it, I certainly won't let you clear it away. Go away and think. Then, when you can come back and tell me that you do see the use of it, I may allow you to destroy it. So it's this idea that until you understand why something is the way it is, you shouldn't get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can explain why it's there, and then explain why it would be better if it were not there, then you shouldn't torpedo the thing. And so when you're a new pastor, you have the benefit of objectivity because you see things perhaps that other people do not see. But you are unwise if you think that it showed up, that program or that system or that team or that bureaucratic rule. If you think that it just showed up de novo, like, they just thought, here's a thing that we're going to do. It's there for a reason. Someone started that ministry, that program, that committee, instituted that rule or that policy for a reason. And it doesn't mean that you can't get rid of it. It just means that until you understand why it was instituted in the first place, you shouldn't recommend it. Because one, you might very well come around to it and go, well, we really maybe should keep that thing. Or two, people will not buy into the change that you're wanting to propose until you can speak their language and go, I know why we've done this.
Mm-hmm.
We did it for this reason, but here's why we shouldn't do it this way anymore. And so it kind of goes back to being curious, I guess, to point one. But you need that relationship. You need to know why things are there. You need to have and have the trust currency in place to be able to make recommendations. So I know I've kind of maybe started to bleed into point 3 a little bit, but I think it's so important for us to understand why are things the way that they are. Maybe just a kind of a small sub point here or story. You and I, taking over for our founder, Aubrey Malfers, we have found sometimes like we come up with new ideas or new ways of saying or doing things. And then we'll come across some like old document of Aubrey's in Dropbox or something and go, I think we thought we were getting away from something or innovating. And then we see Aubrey had the same point or was making the same point or saying something the same way. And so sometimes that happens. You think you're innovating, but really you're just going back to something more fun.
Which is kind of the nature of our work altogether, that we help churches sometimes realign back to some biblical principles
that's totally true.
that we've innovated away from over the centuries.
Yeah. Not that we ever thought that anything Aubrey was doing was not good or something, but
no.
Sometimes we go, let's try it in a new way. And then we found ourselves innovating our way back to something that Aubrey was doing. Maybe we call it something different or whatever, or slap some new paint on it. But it's like, no, this is what Aubrey was doing with churches 20 years ago. And because it was smart and it was good. Yeah.
Yep. You and I have not authored 26 books or taught in the seminary for 30 years. So we still have things to learn as well.
Yep.
Okay. Our last point here is to communicate hope before you try to cast vision. And again, I think it was in our third point last week. We talked about the relationship between pastor and church coming together in this new relationship in regards to vision and the future of the church and how this should be, a symbiotic relationship that really God ordains together for the benefit of the church and for the world that the church will affect with the gospel. But yeah, communicate hope first before we get into strategy and all that. And this can be done even in the early stages of relationship with the church. Hope, obviously, is what we want the church to sense and feel, regardless of where it is. And, excuse me, we're going to sort of flavor this point a little bit with, a church that maybe is in need of some revitalization or could benefit from optimization to be able to move into a growth trajectory. But communicating hope first, you can do that in almost any situation in the church as somebody new. And you probably feel that way. I mean, it's rare that a pastor would accept this new position, not feeling hopeful himself or seeing potential in the church and in the people. And so I think this is a good additional relationship building element to feel hopeful, to project hope as you're getting to know everybody and learning your way around this new environment. And then in the right time and format venue, begin to cultivate strategy for vision that hopefully will again have been talked about in the hiring process and between the senior leadership of the church and the new pastor. But I think this is going to help people to feel maybe confident towards you and excited about the future with you leading, that you see a hopeful future for them.
Yeah, I think this is so important. People have to trust you. People have to have confidence in you. People have to see what you're seeing. They have to be excited about where you're wanting to lead the church, and it needs to be in alignment with where they see the church. We talked about that last week. The direction should be shared, and you should be winning them over on your ability to guide them towards that shared destination rather than trying to win them over on the destination. So, if you got hired by a church and they didn't have a vision for the future, don't sit in your office and go, well, I waited 6 months and I cooked up a vision over the last 6 months and now I've been here 6 months and I can spring it on them. Don't do that. Build it with them. That part. And then beyond that, try to get people excited about your leadership and your ability to take them there. And you can do that through your sermons. You can do that through relationships. You can do that, through casting vision, and look for early wins. What are some things, we didn't talk about this last week, but we should have. A piece of advice we give to churches that are going through transition is save low-hanging fruit wins for the new pastor, things that no one is going to be offended by and everyone is going to be happy with. We're going to restripe the parking lot, and things are going to look fresh. Or we're putting in some new things that no one's going to be mad about. Everyone's going to love. Hopefully you can get some of those things early too, because that makes people go, oh, things are changing, I really like that. We should have done that years ago. If there's some easy things that you can do like that in the first 9 months, then that's good too. But I would be remiss if I didn't say you should consider an outside process. If the church doesn't have a vision for the future, so that it doesn't come off like you're trying to railroad something down the throat of the church, if you partner with someone like the Malphurs Group, let us be the ones who are guiding the discussion. Then it won't feel like, oh, well, it's just, Pastor AJ's idea. I'll go, oh no, this, we built this thing together. So consider that, because it really is it's a great way to get kicked out, is if people feel like you're jamming something down their throats.
Yeah, what it communicates is, let's work on this together. Me, pastor, you, church, we are one, and we're gonna have somebody come lead us through something that we can develop together, and that just builds ownership in it.
Trust that you want to hear, that you want.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's just a really healthy way of processing through the shared vision, developing strategies, and making sure that everybody is unified. I mean, unity in the church is a huge element. And so, when the church is moving in the same direction together, the fruit of that is just the sky's the limit. Heaven's the limit. So
that's right.
There you go. All right, Scott, we've got some things last week that the church can do to prepare healthily for their new pastor. And then this week, things the pastor can do to work from a healthy perspective, building the relationship with his new church.
Yeah. And like we said last week, go to healthychurchestoolkit.com, sign up free for 7 days. And inside the toolkit, you'll see there's a thing called the Church Checkup Challenge. It's a 7-day kind of mini course that's inside there. I'd encourage you to go through that because with your team, with your elders or whatever, because it will get them starting to ask some of the questions. That's something that you can do before you would go into a whole revitalization process. Go through that church checkup challenge because you'll go, well, we don't know. We don't know what our discipleship pathway is, or, oh, I'm not sure. Are we clear on our mission language? Or, I don't know. Do we have a clear vision for where we're going? It doesn't give you all the answers, but it would get your team asking some of the right questions. And you can sign up at healthychurchestoolkit.com for 7 days and go through that material with your team in that time frame. And it might be helpful for you to figure out, should we go through a revitalization process or not?
Brilliant idea. Thanks for being with us, everybody. The links that we've mentioned are going to be down in the description for this episode in your podcast app or in the YouTube description below. Thanks. We'll see you again next week.